Putin's regime is weaker than it pretends. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is ready to abandon Ukraine's bid to join NATO. Meanwhile, U.S. urges Ukraine to give up Donbass to Russia. What are the main weaknesses of Putin's regime and what is being discussed in the U.S.-Ukraine negotiations? Russia's economy and military strengths are not as solid as the Kremlin claims, according to a new report by The Economist. Moscow's public messaging is designed to show strengths, but deeper realities tell a more troubled story. State media in Russia continues to project confidence, portraying the country as resilient and winning on the battlefield. But independent analysis shows that Russian advances have been limited, slow and costly. In recent months, Russia has made only small territorial gains while losing large number of troops and resources, highlighting a stark gap between propaganda and battlefield results. Economically, the war has placed heavy strain on Russia's finances. High military spending, falling energy revenue and growing budget pressures have weakened the economy, while Moscow still earns money from oil and gas sanctions and diverted investment have eroded growth. Ordinary Russians are feeling the pinch through higher taxes, rising prices and cuts in public services as the government puts military needs first. Analysts cited in The Economist say the so-called war economy is showing signs of strain and that long-term stability is far from assured. Public support inside Russia is also under pressure. Patriotic messaging remains strong, but many citizens face the everyday cost of war, from inflation to personal losses. The report suggests that Kremlin's narrative focuses on managing domestic expectations rather than celebrating real progress. Despite the challenges, The Economist warns that Putin is unlikely to pursue peace unless he can present it domestically as a victory. The report says Putin's strategy has involved premature claims of success in the past, and he is expected to continue fighting even if Russia's underlying weaknesses grow more visible. Experts quoted by the magazine say this means the war could continue longer than many Western observers expect, because Putin wants to avoid any scenarios that looks like defeat. This dynamic could prolong the war and make diplomatic breakthroughs harder to achieve. In summary, The Economist paints a picture of Russia that wants the world to believe it is strong, but it's facing real economic pressures. Putin's resolve to declare victory, even before conditions clearly justify it, could keep the war going even as Russia's resources are tested. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has signaled a major shift in his strategy, saying Ukraine is prepared to abandon its long-standing push to join NATO if US and Europe provide firm security guarantees instead, a move aimed at jump-starting stalled peace talks with Russia. The proposal marks one of the clearest indications yet Kyiv is willing to compromise on one of its core demands in exchange for lasting protection. For years, NATO membership has been at Ukraine's security strategy, but Zelensky said the goal was never the alliance itself, it was safety. If that protection can be delivered through binding commitments from Washington and Europe, he suggests that Ukraine is willing to take a different path. The offer comes amid mounting pressure from US to make progress toward a negotiating settlement, even as Russia continues missile and drone strikes across Ukraine. US involved in the talks have argued that alternative security guarantees could serve as a practical substitute for NATO's collective defense pledge, so details remain unclear. European leaders, meanwhile, are weighing the risk of a deal reached under fire. Some fear that rushing an agreement without ironclad guarantees could invite future aggression, while others see Zelensky's move as a rare opening to break the diplomatic deadlock. Despite the concession on NATO, Ukraine has drawn a firm line elsewhere. Zelensky has rejected any agreement that would require Kyiv to surrender territory to Russia, warning that such concessions would reward aggression and undermine Ukraine's sovereignty. Whether the proposal is enough to move the talks forward remain uncertain, but Zelensky's willingness to rethink one of Ukraine's most symbolic war aims underscores the growing urgency surrounding the negotiations and the narrowing window for a diplomatic breakthrough. According to the Wall Street Journal, U.S. and Ukraine are holding new talks aimed at breaking deadlock over a peace deal with Russia as Washington pushes for progress before the end of this year. The journal reports that U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff is meeting in Berlin with President Zelensky and European leaders to restart negotiations that have stalled in recent months. U.S. officials are urging Kyiv to consider a negotiating settlement, but major disagreements remain. One of the biggest disputes is over territory. Wall Street Journal says U.S. has raised ideas that could involve Ukraine giving up control of parts of eastern Ukraine, including Donbass, or accepting Russia's control over land it currently occupies. Ukrainian leaders have pushed back, saying they will not agree on territorial concessions without a democratic process, such as referendum. Security guarantees are another key issue. According to the journal, Ukraine is seeking firm, legally binding security premises from U.S. and its allies to protect the country from future Russian attacks, similar to NATO's mutual defense commitment. NATO membership, however, is not seen as realistic right now. European governments are involved in the talks but are urging cautions. The Wall Street Journal reports that European leaders fear a rushed deal could strengthen Russia, especially as Moscow continues missile and drone strikes. The talks were organized with support from German Chancellor Friedrich Merz and include participation from several European countries, the journal says. Russia has continued fighting even as diplomatic efforts move forward, making a quick deal difficult. Meanwhile, European officials are warning that US-backed peace plan for Ukraine could end up helping Russia rather than stopping the war, according to Bloomberg. The concern centers on proposal linked to President Trump's team, which is being discussed as part of broader efforts to push Ukraine and Russia toward a deal. European diplomats told Bloomberg they fear parts of plan could act as a Trojan horse, appearing to offer peace while giving Moscow new ways to gain power. At the heart of the idea that would create a demilitarized zone or special arrangements in Ukraine, including the Donbass region. European officials worry that forcing Ukrainian troops to pull back or limiting their movements could weaken Ukraine's defenses and make it easier for Russia to regroup or quickly expand its influence. Some officials fear Russia could use such arrangement to move forces, pressure local populations, or carry out political and information campaigns without breaking ceasefire. Over time, they warn that it could allow Moscow to prepare for future military action while avoiding direct confrontation. European leaders also worry that unclear rules of weak enforcement in any peace deal would make it difficult to respond if Russia violates the agreement. Several diplomats told Bloomberg the past experience with Moscow has made them skeptical of deals that rely on trust rather than firm guarantees. The concerns come as U.S., Ukraine, and European governments are engaged in intense talks aimed at ending the war. While many European leaders support diplomatic effort, they remain wary of any plans that could leave Ukraine more exposed. Bloomberg reports that these fears are shaping Europe's cautious response to U.S. peace proposal, with officials pushing for stronger safeguards to ensure that any agreement does not give Russia opening to regain strength under the cover of peace. That's all for today. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and glory to Ukraine.